Okay, so the fourth in the series of little screencasts revision for the exam is around one of the marketing mix P's, which is promotion. Okay, so we're thinking specifically about developing promotional strategies. So thinking about that element where this enables us to communicate with our target audience. So obviously we could have a great product at a really interesting and relevant price. Distribution can be good, but ultimately, if our customers don't know about us, if they don't have brand awareness, then we're never going to enter into that choice set, which is where we want to be. You can see on this slide that we've got the kind of really general approach in terms of the um, flow of how we develop a promotional strategy. So obviously we start off with marketing strategy. That means that the promotional strategy is clearly not like a marketing mix element. It's clearly not developed in isolation. So it's going to communicate the key benefits of our product. It might tell the customers about the price. It might tell them about where they should be able to obtain our product or service from. So having a really a marketing strategy is obviously important, so we start to understand how that promotional strategy is going to help. So ultimately, the promotional strategy needs to reflect the marketing strategy. So we start this off by identifying, as we did in the seminars, and understanding our target audience. So this involves developing a really deep and detailed profile of who our audience is. So we understand the kinds of messages that are going to appeal to them and the nature of the media that's the best and most effective way to reach them. Okay, without having that really deep understanding, it's going to be really difficult for us to determine what our promotional strategy should look like. We then define our objectives. So we think about what it is we're trying to achieve with this promotional strategy. So is it brand awareness? Is it trial of the new product? Is it to change our positioning strategy? So we really be clear about what it is we're trying to achieve. And obviously these objectives need to be smart. Now, on the schematic, you can see it says set budget. And as I said in the lecture, sometimes, depending on the nature of the approach to budget that we're using, so if it's objective and task, it may be that this comes actually down here at the bottom rather than before the message and media. Because if it's objective and task, it might be that we have to research and calculate the costs of the media that we want to use before we can determine what our budget is. So this kind of the position of this step here, either whether it's here or here, is dependent on the nature of the budgeting approach that we're using. So after this, we then determine the nature of the message, the tone of voice, and what it is we want to get across to our target audience. And we think about how we might do this. So what do we want to say and how are we going to say it effectively? So the media goes into thinking about, are we TV advertising? Are we using social media, which we'll come to on the next couple of slides. Importantly, we need to know which parts of our campaign have been effective and which ones are ineffective, because obviously we want to do more of the effective, use more of the effective media and messages and less of the ineffective. So it's really important that we have some element going back to our objectives around how we measure its effectiveness. And again, we feed that back into the next promotional strategy we execute. In terms of the promotional mix, this is just thinking about that media element on the last slide. So what are our options in terms of how we communicate with our target audience? And obviously this is an area that has grown substantially over the last 10 years with the advent of the internet and social media, giving us another dimension in terms of reaching our target audience. Now, what's really important here is this is very much based around who our audience is. So, we're not going to use social media just for the sake of it. If our target audience are not heavy social media users, but they are heavy TV watchers, perhaps they watch Coronation Street, then that's when we want to be trying to reach them, providing that's within our the realms of our budget, of course. So at this stage, we determine which and how much of each of these different elements are we going to use. So it's important that we have an awareness of all the options and the related resource. final slide on promotion. It's really important that you understand the difference between push and pull strategies. So these are communications strategies, and that you are able to explain them with examples. So remembering that a push strategy is where we push the message down the distribution channel. So we might push a message to a wholesaler who pushes it onto a retailer who then pushes it onto the end consumer. And you might see examples of this might be if you see Tesco's running an advertising campaign because they've got a promotion on Kit Kats, for argument's sake. So it's that, you know, rather than Kit Kat going direct to the consumer and advertising their brand, they're using the retailer to do that. They're using the distribution strategy, and this is a push promotional strategy. A pull promotional strategy is where we, as the manufacturer, go direct to the end consumer, and we try to engage the end consumer in pulling them into the distribution channel. Okay, so this would be, for example, Kit Kat advertising direct, so doing some TV advertising direct to the end consumer. So just to revisit this, push is where we push the message through the distribution channel, and we use those different channel members, whoever they might be, to reach the end customer. Again, another example could be if you go in store in Currys, you're going to go and buy a fridge freezer, and they are pushing a specific message on you from you know, from the kind of personal selling perspective. The kind of pull element of that would be if they if that brand also did some TV advertising or something on social media, where not using any of the intermediaries in the channel, they go direct to the end consumer. So in a really traditional fashion, this is very much based around kind of manufacturer and consumer contexts. And that's kind of probably the easiest way to explain that. But it's really important for the exam that, as I say, you have a good understanding of the difference between push and pull strategies. You can, all of the books we've recommended on the module, the Kotler and Armstrong book, they all have chapters on promotion. So make sure you read up on push and pull. There'll also be some internet sources as well that you can have a look at. So make sure you're really familiar with the nature of push and pull, and that you are able to describe them, explain them, and give examples as well. So that brings us to the end of this podcast, this screencast in terms of promotion. So as I've said already, make sure you're familiar with the schematic of how we might develop a promotional strategy, know the kind of different options in terms of promotional mix, but also why you might select specific ones, and make sure you're familiar with the push and pull communication strategies.